Oh, goody.
Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So today we have an OTA, and there are some wacky changes in here, and we're going to dive right on into it, trying something a little bit different with this one. Going to be featuring some decks alongside the cards we're going to be talking about that got adjusted. So yeah, Hela's been very popular after Hellcow got its initial buff. And many were kind of debating, will it get nerfed, will it not get nerfed? And it did get nerfed, but in kind of the funniest way possible, and in a way where I have no doubt many people are going to be calling this a buff. And yeah, so what did they do to Hela? Hela went from being a 6/6 to a 6/7, but now the card she is going to resurrect come back with -3 power instead of -2. So the goal with a nerf like this normally is to not completely like dumpster the card, but they just want to lower the play rate. In spite of how annoying people find Hela, and I get it, I'm one of the people who finds her annoying, Hela's stats are incredibly just middling mediocre. They just average out at 50%. That is just where the deck is at. But the popularity was really, really high, and that is why I think they decided to take a swing at her. Now, is this a nerf? Yes, it is a nerf. There will be a significant number of games where Hela is putting out less power, and sometimes you do need those small margins to win. But I just don't understand why they gave her a point of power, man. It's so silly. I think at least if you left her at 6/6, you could have kind of convinced more people that, hey, this is a nerf. But buffing her power when a bunch of, if not most of the Hela decks are already running Luke Cage, you're going to have a ton of people just saying, oh, this is a buff. And while it's not strictly true because it won't be a buff in every game because you're not getting Luke Cage down every game, I think just on the surface level, enough people are going to have that train of thought, but I'm not sure this is going to actually meaningfully decrease Hela's play rate like they might have been hoping to achieve with a change like this. Maybe it will. Normally, nerfed card syndrome is a very real thing where even cards that are still good, people move away from them after a nerf. But I just think that if that was the goal of this, they maybe shouldn't have given her an additional power. We'll see what happens there, but fundamentally, Hela isn't really changing super dramatically, and I still expect her to be fairly prominent in the metagame after this change. Next up, we have Hercules. So Move is getting a little bit of a buff this patch, which honestly I'm surprised to see since Move is actually doing very, very well at the high end of play. But the thing with Move is it is a deck people have always sucked with. People are not good at playing traditional Move decks. They haven't played them a lot. People haven't gotten used to them. They're not used to these new cards. And that has been reflected in the untapped stats and presumably also their internal statistics. So we are seeing a buff here to Hercules as well as another Move card in Kraven. Hercules was already seeing play in this Cosmo Move deck. Not every version of this runs Hercules. Some prefer Doctor Strange, but I know Sizer's been doing really well with this one, and he seems to like Hercules. So 3/5 Hercules, yeah, extra point of power. Deck was already good. Not too much else to say on that one. Kraven getting a point of power here too. I like this a lot for one of my personal favorite decks, which was just the Gwenpool Move stuff with Shang. Kraven always been good with Silk. Maybe more people will try it in a traditional move list as well, though the spots for that are a little bit tighter now than they used to be given all the good move support we just got. But Kraven has been kind of fallen by the wayside for a while now, so giving him an extra point of power, definitely something I don't mind seeing. And another card that has been kind of performing a bit mediocre this month for a lot of players has been Symbiote Spider-Man, and he too is getting a buff from a 4/6 to a 4/7. Yeah, this card I think was already pretty good, and now 4/7 is just an even more premium stat line, so it just seems even better. I do think the card still is kind of niche in its applications. It's not going to go into a million different decks, but there are some pretty cool things you can do with it, one of which being making many big multiple men, which has been my favorite way of using the card in this traditional move style deck. And then going right alongside Symbiote Spider-Man, we have a buff to Galactus, which is honestly super surprising to me. So one of the things people have tried out with Symbiote Spider-Man was Galactus stuff, using Symbiote to reactivate the Galactus, make a bigger Galactus. so on and so forth. Galactus going to a 6/6, so between those two cards as an additional 2 power you can get onto your Galactus, resulting in a 13 power Galactus, which is nothing to scoff at. Obviously, there are a lot of counters around, so I don't expect Galactus to become some super crazy meta tyrant with this small buff, but I do think it is a welcome change here, as there are just so many like 3/5s nowadays. I think it makes a lot of sense to give this card at least 1 more point of power, so it's not being outpowered by cards that are essentially half of its cost, which always seemed a little silly to me. I think it's going to take some time to see where the best Galactus stuff lies, but I saw someone running something similar to this list we have here in Conquest the other day, and while I don't expect it to become some big meta thing, it did do some work. And the fact that Symbiote Spider-Man now makes Nimrods even bigger and whatnot too, makes it at least compelling to try out. Then we have Black Panther. So Black Panther going from a 5/4 to a 5/5. Now, obviously, this is a slight buff to any deck that runs Panther. Most of the decks that run Panther are kind of the all-in combo decks that we've been seeing with like Wong stuff, or sometimes you see it in -2. But with this change, I thought I'd experiment with something a little bit different here and just try running Panther as just a general value stat stick. Because now that it has like 5/10 as base power, if you can just bump it up a bit more with a Grandmaster or a Gwenpool or even Symbiote Spider-Man, you don't necessarily need to actually do the whole Zola combo thing. You can just have Black Panther win you one lane, and then use your other cards to win another one. Pretty straightforward, and can also kind of bait people a little bit if they think you're going for the Zola stuff. So this is just a list focused around just having some good synergy with Gwenpool, Scarlet Spider. We're using Zabu because we have 4 different 4-drops. We want to get them down on turn 3 if possible. Some other good statted cards like Silver Sable and Hydra Bob just to help maintain priority. Red Guardian as a nod to some of the other decks going around, namely the Madam Web stuff. White Widow just because she's a busted 2-drop. And then Alioth as a way to close the door. Then we have Negasonic getting additional point of power as well. Negasonic hasn't found too much of a home in a lot of different decks, but one of the places she has found a home in and has been pretty strong with has been Supergiant shells. I don't know if Supergiant is really super well positioned into this meta. I'd lean on the side of it probably not being super well positioned, but maybe with some of the changes we got today, depending on what people are trying out, it could be okay. But yeah, this is just strictly upside for Negasonic now being a 3/3, which naturally helps with what Supergiant wants, which in general kind of helps with what Supergiant likes to do, which is often getting priority so you can better take advantage of your Negasonic or your Red Guardian or Alioth if you want to run that. And then swinging back around to nerfs, we have 2 nerfs to round out the patch here other than Hela. First of which is Marvel Boy going from a 3/2 to a 3/1. Honestly, kind of confused about this change. I feel like Marvel Boy decks aren't really dominating very hard. I think they are generally lesser played. I certainly don't see them as much as I was a month ago. Maybe their internal statistics there were saying this card was just putting out just a little bit too much power because it is very strong in decks that have a critical mass of 1-drops or just want to run a Squirrel Girl. But nonetheless, I really don't think this was a change that was super needed. But at the same time, I also don't think it's going to have a super big impact on what this card is doing, as you aren't playing Marvel Boy for his 2 power. You're playing him to buff up all your other stuff, which is often significantly more. So weird nerf, but I don't think it's going to matter too much for the decks that already like running this card. And then the other card getting a -1 here is War Machine, going from a 4/7 to a 4/6. Not super surprised by this change. A lot of people were scared about the War Machine stuff popping up when he first got buffed. And I think those fears have gone generally unfounded in terms of like it doesn't feel like the whole game is being dominated by locking out the game by turn 5. Though that is still a powerful thing to do. It's only happening, 1 in 3 games at most. So it isn't that scary on its own, but War Machine has proved to be a pretty strong card nonetheless, just for the flexibility of having that combo available, being able to play a 620 in the Infinite, and a 4/7 body just being a premium stat line. So not super surprised they're toning him down just a little bit, given they gave him that initial stat buff when he was still a much worse card. So 4/6 feels like a pretty fair spot for this card to be. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for the OTA roundup and a look at some of the decks that these cards that were changed can be used in. Overall, I think this was a very strange patch, and I have a hard time seeing how it's going to actually have a really big impact on the metagame. I think two of the biggest things people find frustrating in the game right now are Hela and Clog stuff. And though Hela did get a bit of a nerf in this patch, nothing for Clog, which is arguably just better than Hela, and as long as Hela's around, Clog is going to stay around because it's one of the few ways you can actually interact with that strategy. So yeah, I'm curious to see what happens here. Move also was already good at a high level, so will these changes be enough to kind of boost it up elsewhere, and will they push it even further up at the top? I don't know. We'll see. But I do generally like most of the buffs we are seeing here. I think they're generally good buffs. And not too many concerning nerfs or anything like that, but I do wonder how much this is actually going to affect the game. My initial read is I don't think it's going to make the meta we're seeing right now drastically different. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.